Hello, everyone, and welcome. I have the pleasure today to talk to Louie. He is going to tell us more about his story and why I'm so happy and honored to have him here with me today to have a great conversation about mental health. This is such an important topic that I believe we as individuals should have a lot more information than what it's out there. So, with that being said, Louis, I would like for our listeners and our viewers as well to get to know you a little better. So, if you don't mind giving us a brief background of who you are, where you come from, and why are you so passionate about this mental health topic?
Abs- Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I love talking about mental health and substance and just how the mind works with people. I actually, I started off as a steel fabricator back in my day, which is steel fabrication, welding, with beams and columns. And I had the privilege to actually build like the Reliant center there, like in Houston. I did the Chicago Bears Stadium. I did several hospitals. So as far as trade, like I'm very good, like with my hands. Like I'm able to build, cabinets, wood, anything. But my focus at that time was steel and welding. During that time, I actually had a lot of people come up to me and just started asking me questions about life. I guess they just found comfort, warmth, and speaking with me. So I just started to listen to them. I took time to stop my work and listen to them, and I offered the best advice I can give. And one person led to another. But by the time I knew it, I mean, I had several people talking to me throughout the day. So I would have to stop my work and give them, I guess, sessions, right? And so my supervisor kind of caught eye on that, and he said, Louis, why are all these people coming and talk to you? And I told him I just love to talk about life and try to offer the best advice I could. And so he's the one that actually told me about school. He said, there's a degree for that, right? Like, you can go to school for that. It's called college, obviously, because I grew up in a time and place where college was not even a mention. School education like was not even like in the picture. So so I inquired, and obviously, one thing led to another, and I started like my degree plan, and I got into counseling and social work, and had the privilege to start off my first official office job, right? Working with children under Child Protective Services back in 2007. Actually, I was an investigator for CPS, and I did that, and I loved that, and I just uh, was able to have a different view like of the world and stuff, and uh, started working again with either children from 0 to 17, foster children. uh, so I was able to work with a foster care agency that kind of helped me out with another point of view. First, I was removing the kids, right, that were physically abused, neglected, and then on the other spectrum, on the other job, I was placing them in homes, and I was placing them like in foster homes and foster parents and shelters and such. Then I had the privilege to work with substance users, both juveniles like and adults as well. I was able to kind of help counsel them, kind of lead them the right way, or at least I thought would be the best way at that time. I had the privilege to work with the offenders uh, at the Bexar County Jail, both male and female offenders. I was able to teach the classes like anger management, trauma informed classes as well, moral recognition therapy classes as well. So we did that. And I also had the privilege to work with the homeless population downtown, located in San Antonio, Texas. I had the privilege to work under Haven for Hope, and that's where I had several hands in like several pots. So we worked with mental health, we worked with substance, and also work with the homeless population all in one. And currently, like I'm working with under the domestic violence program for the city of San Antonio. So that being said, like I have knowledge from 0 to 99, and on like how the brain works, how people function and think, and it just kind of fascinates me. Like it's the reason that I wake up. I believe it's the reason that I was born to just kind of dwell in that type of population. I don't think a regular office job will be for me. Mind you, I still do a lot of activities and hobbies and building things for other clientele in my garage. I still do that because I still go back to like my roots, and I love doing that on my off times, which is rare. But on the weekends, mostly Saturday or Sunday, like you will probably find me like in the garage building something. But in my professional life, I love helping people, talking to people, and trying to digest their minds.
Thank you, Louis. That's such an enriching answer. And there's a lot. There's a lot that you've done. There's a lot of places that you've spread a seed of help,
Mm.
right? And support. So
Yes,
I'm very curious of knowing how have like I bet that has been very hard, right? Like working with kids, substance abuse, like just so like getting into these different um, spectrums of how mental health can look. If you don't
right.
mind sharing with us, what has been like one of your most impactful moments throughout your journey that you can say that there's a before and an after of who Louis was when you encountered this situation?
Yes, absolutely. And like there's just so many stories to tell. But I would kind of back up a little bit for the mental health approach. So like a mental health, like I found out in through all my walks of life that mental health like affects the emotional state, it affects the psychological state, and it affects the social well-being state of everyone. Like it really relates how we handle stress, how we react to stress, how we respond to stress, how our vision through our eyes and lenses are about stress and anxiety and just about the world. So, uh, that being said, now that I have known that I have worked with different populations of life, I realize that trauma and maybe a person's life and path really determines on the childhood, on the from the moment that we are born really determines how maybe we will live our lives. Uh, we're not in a direct, like we're not predestined to know exactly what what paths we're going to take, but we have a pretty much research background, historical background that we know that somebody or a child has been traumatized, repeatedly traumatized since maybe 0 to 3 years old would definitely affect the well-being, the psychological well-being, and the emotional well-being as he becomes an adolescent, a young adult, an adult. Tries to function with life, and so that's been one of the beauties that I've experienced because I've worked with different populations in life. I've had the opportunity to see a child grow up and unfortunately be affected and kind of determine the child's path. And not that every traumatic event or every traumatic person will have a negative path, but it just has a harder obstacle. You just have to you have harder hurdles to kind of leap over to make the best decisions in life. Um, I'm not sure if I answered your question, Jackie, but I have so many stories of the goods and the bads and the bads, and the goods and the goods. Um, w- uh, I don't know if you can maybe rephrase the question to be more.
Actually, you just gave me a lot in there because you gave us a key, right? Which is childhood is extremely important because
Absolutely.
it defines how that individual is gonna progress for the rest of life, basically.
Yes.
So I can imagine that you've been through a lot, just meeting with so many different people and understanding that their childhood it's actually what shaped how they are in the current state. So, with
Yes.
that being said, Louis, I completely agree with that statement. I'm a passionate of mental health as well, and just like in general, like therapies and coping. Even
Yes.
though my educational background has led me somewhere else, I think that this is such an important thing to blend with anything we do in our careers. So
Correct.
because of that reason, we tend to think that because we have these like very strong traumas at home, we tend to think that there is not work to be done when it comes to mental health. And sometimes we tend to
Absolutely.
forget that a small anxiety, stress, depression can be perceived in so many ways in our daily lives, because some
Right.
of us, we are students, we are employees, and we tend to live those things every single day in every different situation. So
Right.
for us, like people that we tend to be, I don't know, like in a class or working with a colleague, and when we start facing these scenarios, what would you say from your experience that helps uh, alleviate these type of feelings from your expertise?
Very good questions. Very good questions. Let me, like, if you don't mind, like, let me define like the three main traumas in life, and obviously those have different branches. But like, I'll define the three main traumas, and I'll explain exactly how we all, pretty much everybody under the sun, falls into that category. So we have acute trauma, which means a one-time event, right? It means just like if you have just been in solitaire all your life, and you just happen to have that one trauma, then you experience acute trauma, right? It's just that one-time event. And unfortunately, like, I believe that everybody under the sun has experienced at least one trauma event. If you can't remember when, let me take you back to when you were born. The moment you're born, the doctor or the nurse smacks the baby right in the behind, pokes the toe, pokes the foot, and the baby starts crying. So the baby has already experienced several trauma events. One, the baby was experiencing warmth, 100% security inside the womb, inside the mother. And then the moment that the baby walks out of that womb or comes out of that womb, that's already a traumatizing event, because that baby is actually been separated from once he or she knew for 9 months, 8 months, 7 months. They're being separated of that. Two, they cut the umbilical cord. So whatever that baby has known of life, breath, has been cut now. There's a different type of trauma event now. There's a separation. Three, what the baby now has to experience oxygen. The baby's lungs and all the systems have to start working. That's something that the baby has never experienced in their life. Four, now the baby has to cry to be fed. So all these traumatic events happen within the first 30 minutes of everybody being born. So I believe all of us have experienced for sure acute trauma just in that. So we've already discovered the moment we're born what life is like, what pain is like, what a trauma event is like, what crying sounds and feels like within our little heart and our little soul. Number two, like another one of the main traumas that everybody experiences or that everybody can experience is chronic trauma. What that means is multiple of the same events. For example, that can fall into domestic violence, that can fall into several accidents of the same type. For example, if you're driving, like many of us have gotten our license at 17, 16, driver's license, and you've had three or four car accidents, that's already chronic trauma. If you're in a domestic violence and you're married to your significant other, your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're engaged, and he or she has repeatedly traumatized you, that's chronic trauma. They've either verbally traumatized you, physically, emotionally, but if it's a repetitive cycle of that same event, it's a chronic trauma. Now, I believe doesn't matter. I believe maybe by 5 years old, by 3 years old, and I don't know if there's research in this, but a lot of people under the sun have already experienced not only acute trauma but chronic trauma. For example, I mean, we know as Latinos, right, that we used to give spankings a lot, or we still do. So for every negative act or for every bad act, the mother or the father swaddles the child on the behind, either with a belt, with a chancla, with a branch, with whatever they have on them. They're going to swat them. That's a repetitive event till they're 9, 10, 11, 12. until they're teenagers, then maybe they can't hit them anymore. So that in itself is chronic trauma already, being spanked over and over and over for doing something bad. So we've already experienced acute trauma, we've already experienced chronic trauma, and the third main trauma, and that I don't know if I'm still answering your question, but I'm gonna get there. The third main trauma is going to be the complex trauma. That's multiple traumas during the lifetime. For example, you get spanked, you get yelled at, you get physically abused, you get in a car accident, you have a bomb, somebody, like you hear a gunshot, you get scared, you have anxiety. All those are complex traumas, multiple trauma events put into one lifespan. Now, I could be wrong, but I believe that everybody under the sun has experienced not only acute, chronic, but complex trauma. That being said, because we've all experienced some a type of complex trauma, it's a mystery of how we can fix ourselves, of how we can fix people, of how we can lead people to the right path. Because ever since we've been born, we've experienced trauma and good, and trauma and good, and trauma and good. And it's just a pattern. Um, so newborns have this brain development that their brain is still a sponge. They're absorbing every single thing that they can, and that's how they learn so fast. So whenever there's a trauma event, the brain is heightened to that level of stress and anxiety, and the brain thinks that that's the way the child should be living. That's the way of life. And so by three, have you heard of the terrible twos, the terrible threes, and anybody under 5 years old? They're just hard to catch, and they're so hyper because the brain is already so heightened from any traumatic event at that age that that's the way that they function. Anything below that is just abnormal. So whenever we develop that into our seventh grade, eighth grade, teenage life, adult life, we're, our brain somehow is so heightened because of this trauma event that it's very difficult for us to make the right decisions. Two, have that reflective listening. Three, are able to 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 even think about ourselves as well-being, who we are. Um, so what I would say, because the world is full of traumatic people, right? That the best things is two things, two parts. Is one, self-care, right? Self-care. Well, I guess I would go back first. Is awareness that we all have been traumatized, including myself, including you, our students, our colleagues, our relatives, our significant others, our wives, our husbands, or everybody under the sun has been traumatized. So the first thing is awareness that we all have been traumatized at one point, understanding that, researching that. Two is, now that we've understand that and we research that, self-care. What does self-care look like? Well, self-care can obviously look like exercise, running, walking, riding the bike, exercising. It doesn't have to be membership of a Gold's Gym or any. It could just be in your living room, fast-paced walking, sit-ups, anything that will actually get the heart to pump, relieves the stress, relieves the anxiety, helps you or helps us as human beings get that balance in life and focuses like on our well-being. It's that self care of regular exercise. Like another thing that's really good for any mental health or anybody that's been traumatized is getting, and this is very difficult even for myself, getting the regular pattern of sleep. Everybody talks about the 8 hours of sleep. Everybody talks about the 6, 7 hours of sleep. Unfortunately, I'm made a little bit different. I get 4 to 5 hours of sleep, and I can still function every day like that. But I recommend at least a set pattern of sleep. Well, maybe let me rewind a little bit. To have a pattern in life, to have a type of a stability in life is very good for anybody that's suffering from mental health and trauma events. It's stability. I wake up at 7. I take a shower at 8. I eat breakfast at 9. It's all these patterns, these routines in life that will help any human being kind of stabilize just a little bit more. It won't fix it, but it'll help stabilize a little bit more. Using the downtimes and fill them up with something good. Using the downtimes in life, because usually downtimes gets people thinking of maybe bad things. of bad situations, these bad thoughts, and maybe even or doing bad hobbies when there's a lot of downtime. So using those downtimes, those fill-ins to do something positive like exercise, self-care. Like another great thing is setting goals and priorities that only I can reach. Not something such as big as 5 years and a 10-year goal is something that I can just literally stretch my hand and reach it myself throughout that day. These miniature goals, these miniature priorities throughout these days can help me one in several things. Uh, uh, Lift up my like my motivation because I've actually accomplished something in life, right? Get me like in a happy mood because I've actually accomplished something in life. So it makes me more happy throughout my day. It makes me more satisfied. It makes me be more reflective about other people as well because I'm accomplishing something in my 24-hour day and I'm happy about it. Gratitude. Practice gratitude is one of the biggest things that we all lack. Gratitude for every single thing, not for monies, not for our salary, not even the roof like over our heads, or maybe things that we have tangibly accomplished throughout life with either education or anything like that. Doesn't make gratitude and that doesn't make peace. Peace starts within. The gratitude starts within, looking at your surrounding and just being thankful of your surrounding, being thankful that you are, that I am here, being thankful that I am physically healthy. If I have mental health, I'm thankful that I don't have two or three of my symptoms. If I uh, live in a small house or an apartment, I'm thankful that I do have that. You know, just being that gratitude, acknowledging gratitude in every single avenue of our lives will help kind of manage that mental health. Like another thing is just focus on the positive. It's something things that I practice on my own. It's something that I teach everybody, or that like I try to kind of help have everybody like understand. Focusing on the positive is the key thing for peace and abundance living, regardless whether you're spiritual, whether you're a churchgoer, whether you're a workaholic, whether you're making millions or billions, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a student, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years old, it doesn't matter. When we are able to mentally and wholeheartedly focus on the positive, our day, our hour, our minutes and seconds will actually be more productive. We will be happy in life. It definitely will lessen our wrinkles and lessen our blood pressure. Just being gratitude for every single thing. And last but not least, and then I'll get into what I believe would be the best therapy. But last and last least is we have to stay connected. We have to stay connected to people like ourselves. We have to stay connected to either our student body, to our family, to our relatives, to our significants, to our colleagues, to our workplace. Staying connected with people is key. But let me rephrase that: staying connected to positive people, because we all have those negative people somehow, unfortunately, within our family or our workplaces or our school places. But being connected with positive people will help me balance my mental health and will help me in my trauma episodes. Because not only, like, for example, me, let's say if I think that I mastered my trauma, that I think that I mastered my mental health, staying connected with positive people and staying connected with these people can hold me, one, accountable, right? But whenever I do have an episode, because I am going to have an episode, as long as I live, I will have an episode. Two, they will help me whenever I need somebody to lean on. So staying connected will help me be accountable to somebody, help me have somebody to lean on. Three, have somebody to talk with, to vent with. And I believe that's one of the best sessions is venting, is letting everything out, is just talking about it, whether it doesn't make sense to you. Having that friend, that colleague, that significant other that just can hear without uh, without any blame, can hear without any, can hear with understanding of where we're coming from, even though we don't make sense. So I acknowledge everybody that's out there that's going to hear this podcast. You have to get regular exercise, make sleep a priority. You have to think positive. You have to be gracious for everything that you have. And last but not least, you have to continue to stay connected to the positive people. People come around for a reason. And I know that this is like, I know, Jackie, too, that you had a two-part question. I just answered the first part. I'm not sure if you still
I
want me to answer the second part, or
I love it, and I do want the second part, but I just want to get some comments in this first part, which is
absolutely.
super important to have this information. Um, I've been reading a lot recently this past year, so a lot of research that has been done on how to bring our endorphins up, which is
Yes,
exactly what we need to just feel more happy. And I've been
yes,
reading a lot, and a lot of the advice that you're giving us today, which is stay positive, look for something that you can be consistent on, even if it's a small thing. I want to add to that it's so important that you are able to identify what are those things that bring the spark out of you, like, and it can be something so simple, such as
yes,
eating your favorite fruit or going to your favorite park for 5 minutes. We tend to leave these activities as if they don't matter that much, when
yes,
sometimes when we're in those down moments, because as you said, it's life, and as long as we live, we're going to have those roller coasters of emotions. And I
yes,
think maybe the monks who have, like, have this ability to be way more like internally and controlling their emotions way better, but in such a crazy lifestyle that we have, it's hard to
yes.
be consistent in balancing our emotions every day, all
Absolutely,
the time.
absolutely,
So I
absolutely, Jackie. And then actually, like on the other spectrum now, when we don't take care of our well-being, when we don't actually are aware of our mental health or aware of our trauma, then the opposite of everything we've been talking about will happen. We will become more angry. And like you mentioned, every little single thing, every single little stop sign, or every discussion will lead to an argument. We will be more quick to blame, quick to feel depressed about ourselves, quick to look for love in different places that are not healthy,
yeah,
right? So that being said, whenever we don't pay attention to these simple things, we will do the polar opposite. The polar opposite, which in any sense will drag us into a rabbit hole, into a dark place, like in our lives. And then sometimes it's harder for us to even come back to even see a little bit of the light, because we're so dwelled in this clouded thoughts, this mindset. And so that's where, Jackie, we actually have the self medication. That's where we have the high drug use in the U.S. and not in the world at this time. That's why we have all these angry people that react with either physical violence, shootings, domestic violence, murders of the worst, because they have not actually dealt with their trauma since they were 3, 4, and 5 years old. And so because they don't sleep well, because they don't take care of themselves well, because they're not connected right with positive people and a positive well-being habits, so they lean towards the dark side. And that's human nature, like in a sense. When we expose ourselves to vulnerability, when we expose ourselves to anything that's negative, by human nature, we're going to lean to that 90% of the time at high levels of speed, because in a sense we're all sinners and we all lean towards the worst, because that makes it easy for us. It's hard being good, right? It's hard with the always following the right path. It's hard following a spiritual path. It's easy to follow a sinful path. I always say that I have a doctorate degree in sin. That was from 3 years old. I have that with little to no accomplishment, and I believe that everybody has that too in the world. We have the degrees of sin. We all have the degrees of negativity. Like, have you ever thought that it's easier to talk about somebody negatively than positive? And that's our human nature. So you bring up a good point. Like, if we don't follow these acts, then we will fall astray. So it is hard. It's like a salmon trying to swim upstream. They're masters of that, but not every fish would do it. Not every fish would do it. But I believe that people that can actually be aware and make this into a lifestyle, make this into a lifestyle. Because again, I think we all try to find these quick fixes or these quick positives in again into drugs, into having multiple partners, into having this multiple lifestyle of richness and all this wealth. And we think that we can find peace and happiness in that sense. But obviously, we all lie down at night and we all have these thoughts, and it's the way that we function our lives until we can find that inner peace. The moment we have these roots, and the moment we're able to self-aware that we are traumatized, I've been traumatized, I publicly admit I've probably been one of the most traumatized people. So I have to be on eggshells every single day because I can easily reflect back to my old ways or easily reflect to the negativity and always or feel bad about myself. But whenever human beings themselves can actually start thinking that it is a life, uh, like it is a day to day living lifestyle, then hopefully we can have a better world. But unfortunately, until then, uh, uh, we live the world that we live in. It's not a microwavable fix. It's not something that we can put in a microwave and in 2 minutes the roast is done. It's just I wish it was that easy. It's not a snap of a finger. There's not even a method. Like it's not. Unfortunately, it's not even medication management. Like we talked about, it's not. If I take my medication at 9 a.m. every day religiously, I'm gonna be a better person. Unfortunately, that's not the way life is that these little band-aids that we have around us, such as medication, such as tangible items, such as wealth, such as salary, good jobs, even in education, is still a band-aid. But how many people have we seen that have all these degrees or that has all this wealth and riches and everything going for them that they're still miserable, that they still can't find who they are at life? And so yeah, definitely that's a
And,
great point.
and Louis, absolutely. Like I completely agree with you. And I want to emphasize that combining the past idea that you mentioned and what we're just talking about right now, it's how important is to sometimes keep consistent and accountable for those little steps that are in our control. Sometimes we feel that we have to accomplish these big goals, such as
Right.
you said right now, like changing the world, changing the stigma of mental health. And then when we see such a big goal, we tend to feel anxious, right? Like, what am I doing? What are my inputs in this topic? But I believe that if we start with small things that we can accomplish, we
Yeah.
can create a huge difference, such as keeping ourselves accountable of the things that we said we were gonna do, right? And one day, 2 days, maybe we don't did it like as we said we will, but just trying
Right.
to keep those endorphins up. Like I wanna emphasize the tip that you gave about sleep. I've been reading how important it is. Even me myself, I used to think that that was just my father telling me like, Jack, you should get your 8 hours of sleep, and I would be like, yeah, yeah, sure.
Right.
And the more I
Right.
learn about these topics, it is true. Like the more
Mhm.
we sleep in a, and it's not just falling asleep, it's actually resting the body, resting the mind. That's
Mhm.
actually why sleep is important, because then
Right.
we're able to change those processes that we live throughout the day. We're able to balance our body, to heal the body throughout that time where we are not actually engaging and doing stuff. So I want
Yes.
to emphasize that. It's so important for our listeners to keep in mind that you can do like very simple and small activities to keep yourself healthy, and start with, as you said, Louis, self-care. It's so
Yes.
important to have a self-care routine, and I will even call it a ritual, right? Like just as we care about other
Yes.
people, just as we want to go give to society, we need to make sure that we have our own cups filled as much as we can and in a
Yes.
very healthy way. I love
Yes.
also the idea that you mentioned about having positive people around. I know it's hard sometimes to identify who can be those supporters of you and who can bring like that light out of you. So
Yes.
let's just pay, as you said, like a lot of attention of who these people is and you getting that support. So Louis, now I do want to go back to the second question that I made earlier, which is what would be your just I just feel it's so interesting what we mentioned right now, like so important because it's doable things that our listeners can do.
Yeah,
However, what would be your suggestion in terms of uh, opening up for those that still can't get there and seek for help without feeling that you are pressuring somebody, but actually caring and be like, okay, how do we identify in a positive way for you to actually start like treating that and being more responsible of what we can do about ourselves in that matter.
absolutely. I think we did live in a day and age, maybe, and I'm talking about maybe 80s, in the year 80s, in the year 90s, where mental health or trauma was a stigma, was a bad thought, or don't discuss that. It's a hush hush, especially within the Latin family. It's things that we don't say, things that are not part of our culture. But in nowadays, I guess, like you mentioned, what would be one of the best things is realize that we're not alone. I'm not the only person in this world that's experiencing these thoughts, these emotions, these feelings. And if not, I'm a big believer that everybody under the sun has experienced something. So we have a multitude of people experiencing pretty much either identical or very common feelings and things in life. So one is realizing that everybody's like that. Everybody in a sense is like that because we're all human beings. But I would go back just to original, very simple things, and the things that we don't really think about is the thoughts. We all have, like, for example, like I'll give you like a very good example or a very simple example of how our day might look like. For example, I believe thoughts is very important. We Thoughts is key to every single thing. Thoughts will help us maybe come to like a response after certain stages, and thoughts can unfortunately sometimes help us assume the wrong things. For example, if I'm going to work in the morning and I'm traveling the speed limit in my vehicle, and a car goes around me and cuts in front of me and almost causes me to have a wreck, I have a thought about that, right? Whatever thought it is, at that time, it's my thought. I own those. I own that thought. My thought can be one of several things. One thought can be, oh, you idiot. Two, my thought can be, oh, that person does not know how to drive. My thought can be, oh, I start honking my horn, and whatever it is, that thought can always, it's always, whenever that happens, it's always a negative thought, right? My thought can be, oh, this person has no respect to to the other drivers. So all these thoughts come from just one person me up and almost causing me to wreck. Okay. So if I lean on whatever thought it was, let's just say that very first thought, that person has no respect uh, of other drivers. What happens with that thought is I have some type of feeling now. That's the stage two. The first is the thought. The second stage is the feelings. Now I develop some type of feeling, whether it's anger, whether it's anxiety, whether it's stressful, whether it's just me mouthing off. But there's always a feeling related to a certain thought, right? And there's just that one example by that person, by that driver, just passing me up the road and cutting me off and me almost having an accident. I've developed a thought. I've developed a type of feeling based on the thought. I cannot change my feeling until I change my thought, right? And so my feeling actually is cousins, is a twin to my initial thought. Now, if I complete the first stage and I complete the second stage based on my initial stage, then the third stage would be my behavior, right? So there's a thought, there's a feeling, and then there's a behavior. So my behavior can be one of many things. I can honk the horn. I can tailgate. I can speed up and almost hit them. I can curse at them. I can mouth at them. I can go to the side and get my gun and point at them. I can go to the side and go around them because I have a 4x4 truck. I can probably go over them. So my thought, my feeling, and now my behavior is in action of all that. I can either tense up my hands and grab my steering wheel, I can tense my teeth, I can turn up the radio, or I can go to the local bar and just drink my night out, or just go across and catch him by the window and just yell at he or she. Now, if I go back to the original stage, right, which is number one, and my thought changes. The same person goes to the same street, cuts me off in the same time, and almost causes me to have an accident. My thought could be, well, maybe that person might be sick, right? Two, that person could have had a call from their significant other, husband or wife or child, that there's an emergency and he or she is rushing to the hospital. He or she might be rushing to the school because now their child, or there's a shooting, or maybe the child is sick. Three, that person can have diarrhea. I don't know. Whatever my thought is, I have control of that, right? And then based on that, then I can go back and slow down and live my day and say, you know what, that person might have an emergency. It's up to me as a pedestrian driver to just respect that and say, let them live their life. They could have a very legitimate reason for speeding, for cutting me off. Obviously, they're not aware that I could have had an accident. So my thought was planted. My feeling based on that thought is like, I'm less tree. I'm just enjoying my coffee. I'm still planning my day. And my behavior is I'm going to control and get to my job at time.
Mhm.
So
Louis,
the way we plan our thoughts and the way we, based on our feelings, is the way we're going to acknowledge that behavior. Yes, go ahead.
it's because I would love to have a comment in that. It's so important, and I invite whoever is watching and listening to take account of that. Like, eh, we shouldn't allow other people or situations to have the power to change us in like that amount of
Absolutely.
seconds. However, it happens, right? It happens all the time that we are not able to have that thought process of being like, okay, what's the thought? How is that harming my state of mind right now? And how am I reacting to that? And most of the time,
Absolutely.
it comes from our traumas, right? As you mentioned, like we've reacted like that for so many times, so many years, that changing that habit becomes so difficult at some point. But I think
Yes.
we do need a lot of more empathy, compassion, and responsibility to work on those changes, and have in mind that we are in control of our own thoughts. It can be a single situation, sometimes even a text, in which we don't
Yep.
have the person in front, but we're already putting a tone in the text message. We're already
Yep.
thinking that they did it in a certain way. We don't even know how we are feeling at like every minute of the day, and we think we can think of someone else. I think
Yes.
that sometimes is crazy because we cannot even put words into our own feelings, but we think we can actually guess the other person. And
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we have a story to tell on just a phrase, on
yes,
just a text. We assume and we go down this storyline and this assumptions and this like, oh my gosh, it takes us to a rabbit hole, and we get lost in all these thoughts that we don't realize.
and it's so harmful and delicate, and we are not aware of how many times we do that to ourselves constantly. So
Yeah.
I don't know, right, how to change that for people. I'm working on that on myself, and I'm inviting to all of you guys that are listening, like, let's be more mindful on those like assumptions, and stopping ourselves before we create behaviors, as you mentioned. So I just wanted
Yes.
to throw that there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just feel that that's an amazing point that we should
Yeah.
like really address.
Yes. No, you brought up a very, very important point, is that we cannot control our surroundings, right? We cannot control Mother Nature. We cannot control that person speeding and almost having an accident with us. We cannot control those things. But you bring up a very good point. The one thing that we can control is our thoughts. It's the way we respond to our surrounding. And that's probably the one of the very few things that we own in life, right? We don't even own our tangible things around us. We like we don't own our salary or our job. We don't even own our education. But we own thoughts. We own the way we perceive things. We're going to own the way we respond to things. We own these three things: the thoughts, the feelings, and our behaviors at every single minute, at every single hour, at every single day that we live. We own those three things. And how we perceive and master those things will determine the path that we take that day.
And if you don't mind me adding to this, is the dialogue that we create on ourselves as well. Because the minute we create a negative thought of whatever happened to us or whatever somebody tells us, then we start creating this resentment to ourselves, or of I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have feel that way. So then
Yeah.
we mistreat ourselves, and that's so important when it comes to mental health. And I know you're not gonna let me lie on this by myself, because I know that you think the same. Like I've been knowing you and everything, and keeping like positive and having that love to ourselves, even when we
Yes.
speak to ourselves. And I
Right.
think, Louis, that this is hard. Like within my
It,
friends and my circles, we
yes.
are the ones that mistreat ourselves the most. So even
Absolutely.
sometimes that you're trying to help a friend or somebody to come out of these negative circles of how you speak to yourself, sometimes it's
Mhm.
hard. What would be your advice on
So,
this?
very, very good comments. So the good thing about the stage one and the stage two, the good thing about thoughts and feelings is that we can again stay connected to people about those things. Let's say if I am having those negative thoughts, I can go to somebody and say, why am I thinking like this? Right? We've had those conversations during lunch, during dinner, during our Thanksgiving and Christmas. Or we've even said it among ourselves. Why am I feeling this way? Right? Which is the first two things: the thoughts and the feelings. So we question ourselves. So the good thing is that before we do a behavior, right? Before we do a response, before we get to the action of our thoughts and feelings, we can always retract and refocus our thoughts. Talk about somebody about our thoughts. Why every time I get this, or when I see this, or when I hear this, I get these thoughts. And like you mentioned before in our earlier session, right, is that these thoughts can be based on our trauma, can be based on mental health balances in life, can be based on maybe us not rooting ourselves to exactly who we are, what's the reason that we're here on earth, what is our purpose. And that's why our thoughts are a little bit clouded. So the good thing about that is that thoughts are thoughts. Thoughts haven't actually committed any crime yet. Thoughts have hasn't completed anything that's negative just yet. Thoughts are usually born within our mind. It hasn't actually got an action just yet. So we've all heard the phrase we can control our thoughts. In a sense, sometimes we have to self-aware of why am I thinking this way? Why am I so angry whenever I hear this? Why am I always so bitter? Why am I always thinking the negative about that person? Those thoughts are a reason for that, and we have to stop and acknowledging exactly what we can do. But sometimes it could tie into the feelings. If we can't master the thoughts, then the feelings are more physical. The feelings can be like, like breathing in and out. I'm just feeling so nervous. I'm feeling so stressed. I'm feeling so anxious about this. Well, because maybe you haven't dealt with the thought that was planted based on that path that you took that morning or that day. If you go back to the reason that you're thinking that way, maybe it can help your feelings. It can help your approach before you get to the last stage, which is the behavior, the action, what everybody sees now. Now you see me getting a citation because I'm speeding. I was thinking, I was feeling, and I acted. I use the behavior now that I get pulled over by the police, or I quit school, or I quit my job. It's the behavior now, it's the action. Or I get angry and I yell at everybody around me, or I hit the door, or I kick something, or I quit, or I open another can of this or that, or I go to sleep even, or I'm depressed. It's still behavior of my thoughts. Or even the behavior is nobody loves me. I'm not good for nothing. I'm too skinny. I'm too fat. I'm not healthy. I'm not talented. I'm not this. I'm not good at writing papers. I'm not good for nothing. Again, it's a behavior that can lead to something that was earlier planned it as just a simple thought. Why do you feel like that? Why do you say this and that? And then usually is the this therapy that we're talking about is just not even scratching the surface. It has to go root to the very beginning of our lives. It has to go root to define self and to define who we are. And that's a whole different podcast. That's a whole different episode. We can always talk about that later. But the defining of who we are as little people, as of why we were even born, is just a whole different topic. But going back to those roots will help us understand us in our 20s, in our 30s, in our 40s, 50s. Have you ever heard the saying, "Ya cuando uno ya está grande," or when somebody is old, they're set on their ways because we're so far from our time lapse of born to 60 to 70 that it's hard for us to get from Z or to A because we're already in X, Y, and Z. So it's a harder bridge, it's harder steps for us to go back to the root because we've lived so long. That I'm a big believer in redirecting children whenever they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because the moment they're 12, 13, or 14, we're not raising children no more. We're raising young adults. We're raising teenagers, and we should not be doing that. We should raise children. So by the time they get to be 10, 11, 12, 13, or 14, they should know how to be self aware of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and actions and consequences. And that's decision making, that's critical thinking. Again, that's a whole nother topic that we can talk about, a whole different podcast. But so if we're parenting and raising juveniles, if we're raising teenagers, we've already done lost the battle. If we're still raising adults, we've lost the battle. We have to raise children. And if you want to just go back, like you mentioned, Jackie, how do we fix this? Then we have to go back and raise the child again, even in the adult body. Mentally, we have to go back as children and understand their actions ever since they were little and say, now I understand why you feel this way. It appears that you were traumatized when you were 3. It appears that you were violated when you were a certain age. It appears that you witnessed your father beating your mother. Wow, that acknowledging that and staying in that and dwelling in that so we can vent with each other is actually putting the puzzle pieces that we're missing into that human being to be a better human in the future. So we're actually puzzle pieces trying to find that piece, putting it together. And sometimes when we're 30 or 40 or 50 and we can't find that piece, we can find it when we go back mentally to our childhood and understand that's the puzzle piece that I've been missing. Now I understand why I'm so angry whenever I see something or whenever I hear this song or whenever I hear this trigger. I understand now. And that in itself is a lifelong battle. That's a lifelong war that we all have in our daily lives. That's not a quick fix. It's not a medication that it's going to make my headache go away. It's a lifelong understanding of that I'm literally living, fixing myself, right? And yes, and that's very interesting. But so we have subtopics that we can always talk about.
And you know what, Louis? I wanna just add to that again, in which I have so many things to say, but I'm gonna try to keep it simple.
It's a lot. It's a
Be-
lot of info.
When I think of what you just said, right, in the fact of understanding that we have to go back and talk to that child that felt that way, or to that girl, like we all have wounds in childhood that
Yes.
we don't fully understand. But as adults, with all these resources that we have nowadays, we can actually go back as the adult and kind of talk to that girl, talk to that boy. And there's so many like techniques and so many therapies that guide us and helps us and support us to actually dig into ourselves. I know when we speak it out, like especially with people that it's not very familiarized with therapy or with all these topics, it may sound very challenging because I
Right.
completely understand that this is a hard thing to do. Like we tend to do better with the external things, right? Like we're dealing with
Right.
the problem of someone else that it's not me. But when we have to go inside and actually do a revision of what we believe, how does this impact me? How has it affected me? How does this shape my behavior? Like over and over the years, to the point that I'm like an individual right now of this age with all these habits, and that I still do those. What
Right.
I would like to say is, if you don't find the motivation of why should I seek for help? Why should I do that if I'm like, I don't know, X amount of age, right? Like I'm this age, I'm already old. Um, what's the purpose? I will say, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, you can find your motivation when you see your kids, when you see your partner, and just think about what are you bringing to a relationship, what are you bringing to a future child, what are you bringing to society, right? Like, uh, why? Because I think that if we work this in ourselves, if we're a certain age, we are actually able to do those changes. Maybe it's not going to impact the 30 years that I already live, but definitely it's going to bring something to my future kids. It's going to help them not have that same wound, that same fears that I lived, of abandonment, of not feeling heard, of not feeling appreciated at home, so that I make sure that I heal this person, so that whenever I have my kids, I'm able to make your path easier. I will put that as a motivation. If
Mhm.
you feel that, because I've talked to a lot of friends that tell me sometimes, "Ya para qué?" No, like what
Yeah. Right.
for? Like,
Right.
I'm already 60 years old and I don't find a purpose to actually get that work done. It's so complicated. I'll rather just keep going on life. And then when you
Right.
think of, okay, yeah, but you can make a huge difference in your family. You can make a
Yes.
huge difference in finding healthy relationships. So
Yes.
I just wanted to throw out there, so that if you guys are thinking that this may sound very challenging and complicated, just think of how challenging and complicated it is when you don't do that. When you
Yes.
see actually your family is struggling with what you haven't put the work on. I don't know,
Yes.
like, I just, this is so fascinating to me, because it comes easy to me because I love introspecting and getting into my own, like, feelings and roots. But I know it may not be as easy for other people. That's why I want an expert like you to guide us in, it's okay. It's okay to start little by little. And
Yes.
thoughts can be just information of yourself. As you said, thoughts are no harm yet. It's just
Right.
information about you. Write those down, try to digest them, and then try to build something positive out of those. I
Mm.
would say that because I feel it's so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you hit great topics. And yes. So, like our surrounding uh, can be like a motivation itself, because you mentioned like our children can motivate us, our family can motivate us. It's like if you ask the question, how can we motivate, or how, like, because either I'm 60 or 70, whatever. But yes, you're right. But so the drawback in that as well is that everything around us will at one point or one day let us down. For example, our children will one day let us down. Our family will let us down. If we're motivated because they, well, the sun's going to rise every day. Well, one day the sun will rise, but there'll be clouds over it. So it'll be a cloudy day. So we're disappointed. So uh, when we lean 100% on the motivation around us, we're going to get disappointed regardless, even with our own flesh and blood. The deep motivation that has kept me running, or the deep motivation that will probably keep you guys running as well, those that are going to be hearing this, is that you have to understand that it doesn't matter how long you live the life, whether it's 30, 40, or 50, or 60, or 70. I guarantee you, and this is talking to the 70-year-olds, I guarantee you that you have not discovered everything that you can possibly live if you don't self-aware. There is there is a mystery puzzle piece that you have not discovered until, like you mentioned, you self motivate, you self aware, and you say, "This is for me. I have not lived my life to its fullest until I am aware of who I am and every single essence and all my five senses and the reason why I was born and finding my purpose because my surrounding network will one day let me down. So if it's not motivation enough, I guarantee you and I encourage you and I motivate you, find the missing puzzle piece that you have not discovered if you have not taken this chapter in your life seriously. And I guarantee you, when you find those little puzzle pieces, you'll be able to find or you'll be able to see the better picture of why you are here. I'm a big believer that nobody was born by accident. Nobody was born without a purpose or a reason. Nobody was born just to take air and oxygen, just to have another heartbeat. Every single person in life was born for a reason. And I guarantee you, I can motivate you to say, well, this is the reason you were born. Or my children, this is the reason I was born. I was born to be a mother. I was born to be a father. I was born to be a student. I was born to be a social worker or a counselor or a carpenter or a steel worker. Unfortunately, yes, that's very good things that you were born, but you still haven't discovered of you. Because what you're doing right now is labeling a father, a mother, a relative is a label. A construction worker, an educator, it's a label. It's still a label of who you are or what you've come to be in the steps of the world, but you haven't discovered you. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of people, like you mentioned, Jackie, that's been 60 or 70 that have not discovered their hidden puzzle pieces of treasure, of authenticity. And then they'll get into that depression mode. They'll say, "Well, why? Why now?" If anything, the older we are, the more we should discover those hidden treasures in our life because that missing puzzle piece can set our life in a whole different other path. It can, like you mentioned, it can help us become better parents. It can help us become better spouses. It can help us become a better worker. But at the end of the day, it's going to help you become a better you.
Absolutely.
That's the reason for the discovery. If anything, if you want to be a better you inside, full of peace, full of love, regardless of your surrounding, it's. I hope that everybody under the sun is able to find these missing puzzle pieces to help them in their path, in their old road, because they would die again. They would die peacefully. They would die happy. They will live every day of their life more joyful, more peaceful, more just all around. Because these people, if you ever find somebody, and I encourage you, those that are listening, if you ever find somebody that's always happy, nitpick of why they're happy, and they're going to always say that it's just something in them that they cannot define, that they cannot just talk about, or they cannot even explain. It's those missing puzzle pieces that they've actually acknowledged of self-awareness, their balance in life of mental health and trauma, and they're just joyous people
And
all around.
thank you, Louis, for rephrasing that in such an important way of saying that we shouldn't be doing anything for so that other people feel this
Right.
or that. We should start with ourselves. Thank you for
Absolutely.
that because you're so right. Yes, it is a motivator to have and also be able to improve others' lives and your kids and your spouse and this and that. But if
Yes.
you don't find that exploration fascinating within yourself for all the like amazing things that can be built after you do that exploration, then it's kind of hard to get even to those second external factors
Hmm.
as kids and
Yes.
family and everything. Well, you
Yes.
know, speaking, Louis, I was so fascinated from what you were saying that I needed to find this quote that I read long time ago, and I just found it, and I'm so happy I did because I want to read it for whoever is like listening to us because I find
Okay.
it so on point from what you just said, and it says we have been to the moon, we have charted the depths of the ocean and the heart of the atom, but we have a fear of looking inward to ourselves because we
Mm.
sense that is where all the contradictions flow together. I
Oh,
love it because
that's deep.
it's so true. Uh,
That is so deep.
we can go into the universe, explore the stars, explore the ocean, think that we have found the best answers in the world outside of us. And we
Mm.
cannot even get in depth because we are so fearful. So
Yes.
I wanted to leave that out there. And we love to finish this um, interview with you, Louis, with any comment that you would love to make or for people, some like a gift out of your heart that you would like to give us based on your experience. I would love to have you here again today to talk about a different topic. And
Yes.
you can just like share something with us so that we can get more connected to these topics. I would very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'll just finish like with this quick comment, Jackie. But I encourage the audience, I encourage everybody that's listening to live your life. Don't live the life that other people expect you to live. Don't live the life that our parents expect us to live. I mean, how many people have we come across that everybody wants to live our lives for us? They're the you should us. Oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that. Oh, really, you should do this. And
You're
no,
good,
I don't think you're doing it right. Yes, yes, absolutely. I don't think you're doing it right this way. You should be doing it this way. And everybody becomes a doctor of living our lives, right? So my encouragement is you live your life without any expectations of anybody else, as long as it makes you happy. It gives you grounded in the world, and it brings joy. It brings happiness. It brings peace. You live your life, and whatever your life is, you can achieve it. If your life is going back to school, do it. If your life is changing a job and trying something totally different, do it. If your life is creating this now other hobby that you're mid-age or older age or younger generation, do it. As long as it doesn't hurt you, doesn't hurt other people, and it doesn't hurt the world, you should be doing that. Do away with your fears, like you mentioned. Yes, some of our greatest phobias and greatest fears are looking inward. It's easy for us to point right at other people. We can catch everybody's fear. We can, oh, so and so is afraid of this. But the deepest fear that you mentioned on your quote, Jackie, is inward, because it's a mystery, and sometimes we don't want to knock on that door because it's going to rattle us, it's going to shake us and trigger us. But that's part of discovering of who we are. I encourage you, and I even challenge you, look into your inmost fear and try to slowly, like we mentioned, face it with being connected to people, being connected to positive people, self care, taking time to just think about you. Because at the end of the day, we're the only ones that have to answer to ourselves. Everybody is busy living their life. We're the ones that that die. We don't die for somebody else. We die for ourselves, right? And so we live for ourselves, right? We were born alone, really. We were born, so we have to live our life totally connected to other people, but an individual. So just think about who you are. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter if you're 99. If you're 99, you thank God, and you are prayerful, and you have gratitude that you've lived to be 99, and you can still find a missing puzzle piece that you have not discovered in 99 years. It's still there somewhere. Our adventure, our journey should be discovering puzzle pieces that we're missing within ourselves first before we can help other people, or before we can understand the population or society is finding puzzle pieces in itself. And that's the journey that we have from zero to 100 and 0. That's just who we are. It's finding those puzzle pieces. So I challenge you, do not stop. Look for somebody that can help you. Find those about you, and I guarantee you pretty much that you will be a better person, that you'll be more peaceful, that you'll be more joyful, that you'll just be a jolly all around human being, and you enjoy life, and you have a reason to take a step. You have a reason to go to work. You have a reason to be who you are, because you've discovered exactly who you are in the innermost part.
I love it, Louis. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I just think that's so powerful. And if we don't think or we don't take this as something that's important, nobody will. If we don't feel that looking inwards and filling our cup and nurturing ourselves is something that matters, we can expect other people to take care about us because we don't even do that ourselves. Uh,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving me this time. I
Thank
know
you.
that we all learned a lot, and I will just like to finally, if you can tell us where we can find you, um, where you are at, like located, if we ever need certain like resources or help to actually start digging more into ourselves, where would you suggest us? And I'll make sure to include this in the like in the information that we share sometimes about the episodes. So that would be
Absolutely.
very, very helpful. And once again,
Uh,
thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Everybody can find me at louis.olivan@gmail.com. Unfortunately, like I'm not able to use some of my work with my personal clients and stuff like that. So I would have to just kind of point out just email, which would be louis.olivan, like in Nancy, at gmail.com. You can always reach out to me and you should have an answer within 24 hours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Louis.
Thank you so much. You guys have a good evening.